on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
I still felt part of the hunt throughout these 7 years, but I just never had the inclination to hunt.
There was a moment where you just came to me and were like, I want a turkey hunt, I'm ready. Well, it's on. Let's do this together.
Feeling the transition from night to day, having nature wake up, it's all new in that moment.
We sat in that spot for hours. I'm not used to getting to like cuddle with my wife, snuggle into each other. That was pretty neat.
You learn how to keep yourself centered, focused, alert.
I see him come in. Then I remember this moment where you were like, I see him. And you just went into a whole nother mental state.
As soon as I heard you say he, I knew it was a Jake or a Tom, and that's all I needed to know.
The high heart rate, the tunnel vision, the fingers start feeling like balloons. Everything's going wah, 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 wah.
When I had my sights lined up in the right position, there was absolutely no turning back.
Episode 133 of the WildFed podcast, No Turning Back, with Avani Vitalis, is brought to you by Surthrival. Right now at surthrival.com, all elk antler products are 20% off with the coupon code STRONG20. These extracts are made with the freshly harvested velvet antler of free-ranging American elk and are one of the world's richest sources of growth factors. Humanely harvested in slaughter-free facilities, Surthrival's elk antler products are made using the same method developed and studied in Soviet-era Russia and used for their elite athletics and military programs. Known for encouraging anabolism, oxygen utilization, enhancing growth and recovery, repairing tissue damage, and stimulating immunity, elk antler is one of the natural world's most unique nutritional supplements. Head over to surthrival.com where you'll find an incredible product lineup. Supplements like immune-fortifying colostrum and medicinal mushrooms, testosterone-boosting pine pollen extracts, and naturally derived vitamin D3 with K2. Again, the coupon code STRONG20 gets you 20% off elk antler products until May 22nd. Surthrival. Why just survive when you could thrive? I'm proud to announce that we've recently started filming for Season 3 of WildFed on the Outdoor Channel, which should start airing beginning of 2023. But until then, Season 2 of WildFed is now on the air. From the 17-year periodical cicadas of Brood 10 to giant Atlantic bluefin tuna to the bison of Standing Rock's Great Plains, Season 2 of WildFed is filled with unique hunts, forages, and incredible wild harvested meals, and no shortage of adventure. Watch Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern and again at 10:30 p.m. on Outdoor Channel. Hey, if you don't have cable, you can still watch the show live as it airs on friendlytv.com. That's spelled friendly without vowels, FRNDLY TV.com. You can get a free trial subscription if you want to watch Season 2, and after that, it's just $6.99 per month. Here at WildFed, we're so proud to have a second season on the air, and we really hope you'll tune in either on Outdoor Channel or friendlytv.com. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. Today's episode is a very special one for me, not just because my guest is my brilliant and beautiful wife, Avani Vitalis, but also because we're talking about her very first hunt. Until this spring turkey season, Avani never really imagined herself hunting. She's been incredibly supportive of me as a hunter, not just cheering me on, but helping with both practical and logistical aspects. Whether it's been paddling the canoe on my squirrel hunts or cleaning the grinder and cutting boards after I butcher big game, it's always been a team effort. But when it comes to pressing the trigger, it's always been me. But that changed this season when, rather spontaneously, she decided she wanted to hunt a turkey herself. I wrote about it today on Instagram, so you can see that post on my @DanielVitalis account, but the short of it is this. I never put pressure on her to hunt. In fact, I just completely and lovingly supported her in not hunting. I think it's really important we honor our partners, whether they share our hobbies and side passions or not, especially with something as intimate and emotionally charged as hunting. So I was pleasantly surprised when she told me she'd like to get out this season for a bird of her own. Of course, we had an amazing time, hunting 3 days in a row, finally harvesting a turkey, breaking down her bird, and all the while filming it all for Season 3 of the WildFed TV show on Outdoor Channel. So, back for her second WildFed podcast appearance, Avani and I are discussing what it was like to make the transition from non-hunter to hunter, how it felt to be filmed on her first hunt, and what led to her decision. Also, a big focus of this episode is about training and preparation, and in particular, getting comfortable with weapons handling, both manipulation and marksmanship, since these can be significant obstacles to new hunters. This is a really great episode and a perfect listen for anyone on the fence about hunting for the first time. So if you know someone who might benefit, please share it with them. I hope this inspires you, and as Avani says in the episode, not just inspires you to hunt, but to always be challenging yourself by trying new things. It's one of the secrets to staying cognitively young, mentally fit, and vital. Joining us for the second time on the WildFed podcast, Avani Vitalis, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Daniel.
Good to have you here. Last time you were here, we did a show called May You Feel Every Tick.
Yes, and it is the season now.
Tis the season.
It's upon us again.
How many ticks do you think between yourself and the dog yesterday, how many ticks do you think you took off?
At least 16.
Yeah. Yeah. 4x4. I think similarly for me, I took Ellie on that walk around the back of the land, and wow, I came back with quite a few. Mostly dog ticks, but that one black-legged tick that was real small crawling on my back.
Yep.
But I'd say at least a dozen myself yesterday too.
They are abound.
Yeah, they do abound. Yeah, and we had a vet out here the other day, God bless her heart.
Yes.
I think that's how they say it in the South. God bless her heart. Who, boy, she was really adamant about, I think it was permethrin that she wanted us to use. And things got a little tense between her and I, because I was saying, like, listen, we pick the ticks off. And she was like, yeah, but, and I was like, yeah, well, that's just what we do. And that's our strategy for ourselves. And I'm certainly not going to poison myself or poison you.
Or poison Ellie. Really,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
ultimately.
chemical that we're putting in her skin, right, on her skin.
Right.
That
Yeah.
would help keep the ticks away. But what is that chemical then doing to her and to us?
Right, exactly. And so, I want to be clear too. It's like not a judgment against how anybody else treats ticks. It's like a personal decision. It's just for us, this is just how we manage it. And
Yes.
Anyway, I want to encourage people to go back to that episode and listen to how we describe our personal strategy, because this is a thing going on around the country now. Everybody's hip to it. Lyme disease is real, as well as alpha-gal. We had a guy out here the other day to do some construction here. Remember, he was talking about a friend of his who can't eat red meat anymore. He's allergic to, because of that alpha-gal allergy from a Lone Star tick.
And they're becoming more prevalent in Quebec now as well, where I'm from originally. There was a time where we'd hear about ticks and we'd hear about the rare occasion, but now it's becoming more common.
Yeah, your brother was just telling us about that, right?
Yeah.
That he's seeing more of them. So there's like a northward migration, as the climate warms, these ticks are able to spread as habitat changes. Yeah. They're spreading more and more. And so you've got, not just Lyme and alpha-gal allergy from Lone Star ticks, but all of these co-infections as well. So, it's pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, and we're back on our 2-day check regimen.
Twice a day checking?
Twice a day, yeah. What did I say?
2 day. Not every 2 days. Two times
a day. I was saying 2 a day checks, but yeah, twice a day checks.
It's like, I always get confused by bi-weekly. I'm like, does that mean twice a week or every 2 weeks? Because it seems, anyway, whatever. Yeah. Bi-monthly. Is that every 2 months, or is that twice a month? Anyway, so every 24 hours we're checking at least 2 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. This morning, it was like first thing in the morning checking, because I had so many on me yesterday. I woke up thinking, what if I missed one? And, we're also at a time of year where it's like yesterday, I just found ticks, and I think you did too yesterday, just crawling around random places.
Yes, on the screens of the windows.
Yeah. Or like where our clothes get piled up, our dirty clothes, because they'll be on the clothes. Yeah. And then, they'll be crawling up the wall wherever I dropped a pair of pants or something like that. So, they're in and around the house, which is freaky too. Because let's say you spent 2 days inside, it was raining or something, you think, I don't need to check. But it's like, well, you might if you've been in contact with the dog, or you've been just in the house. They could be around. So
Yeah, and yesterday was a day I had spent most of my time indoors, but you had gone on those walks through the forest. So I knew this morning too, I needed to really check myself based on like the transfer. Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Ticks transferring over to me in the night.
Well, this is it's really cool to sit down with you today to have this discussion, because it's like a discussion I never really imagined us having here, which is telling your first hunting story.
Same.
And over the years, for folks who've listened to this podcast from the inception, and I just want to say, you've been here since the beginning of WildFed.
Yes.
So for folks who love this project, who like the TV show, who like the podcast, or the brand itself, or just inspired by what we're doing, you've been, behind the scenes as probably my number one support, and what would be the other word, like counsel. As I've moved this, cheerleader too, as I've moved this project ahead. And but in the course of that time, there's been many times on this podcast where I've described how I hunt and you don't, and that's like not a struggle between us. It's like, hey, we have our own spheres of influence in our relationship and in our household, and I've just always really respected your choice. So spoiler alert, this podcast is about your first turkey hunt. But before we get there, maybe you could talk a little bit about your relationship to hunting, I guess, and maybe to weapons as well.
Right.
Through your life and leading up until, now, maybe kind of give us some background on how you felt about it as a kid, how you felt about meat in general, like, all of that, how you felt about guns, and we'll get up until the present day, but let's get the background.
Wow. So as a child, I had my grandfather on my mother's side hunted, and one of my uncles too, and I loved them both dearly. But I couldn't understand them going out to hunt. It was hard as a child to accept that they were going out early in the morning to take the life of an animal. Mm-hmm. And at that young age, you don't connect the fact that you're eating animals on your plate. My mom was serving us meat, for dinner each evening. But I wasn't making that connection. For me, it was just hard knowing it was my grandfather and my uncle going out to do that.
Yeah. And in fairness, there's like, in people's minds, whether this is right or not, there's like a sense of there's a very big difference between animals who are raised specifically to die in the food system versus animals who live in the wild, Right. I think like a lot of people feel that anyway. I'm not saying you did, but like some people are like, yeah, but cows, that's what they're for.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
Versus like, hey, Bambi's like meant to go live out Bambi's life with Bambi's family and Thumper and all of those folks that Bambi hangs out with.
Yeah. Well, I just, it was emotional for me. And also being from Canada, I was raised in a culture where guns were looked down upon, in the sense that I didn't grow up in a family that had guns in the house. As I said, my grandfather hunted, but they were very, they were just for hunting. He didn't have a gun out for protection in the home. It's just, so I just never thought that guns were going to be a part of my life. And this, again, as I got older, it didn't become a judgment. It was more just like, this is not part of my life. This is not going to be part of my life.
You weren't like an anti-gun activist or something.
No, by no means. And
Right.
I think I understood even when I knew I wasn't ever going to have a gun in my life or have it be part of my life. I just thought I wasn't. I really wasn't a judgment against others. It was just, okay, this is not where my life path is going to take me.
It's interesting in Canada because there's obviously a very significant hunting culture.
Yes.
And then there's like in a Venn diagram way, there's like an overlap of American and Canadian hunting. Canadians come to the States to hunt. Folks from the States go to Canada to hunt. Canada is a country with a lot of guns, but largely, and I know there's exceptions. So for my tactical Canadian folk out there listening to this, first of all, high five. But second, I understand this doesn't encompass all of Canadian gun culture, but largely I'd say Canadian gun culture is going to be bolt action hunting rifles with wooden stocks that look like Grandpappy's gun,
right?
Or probably shotguns for bird hunting and maybe for some self-defense type stuff, or maybe I'll actually say home defense type stuff.
Right.
But largely that would be a dual purpose gun that was really probably like a hunting shotgun that you might keep in the house just in case type of thing. But largely Canada, like you said, there's sort of a pretty strong social resistance to the idea of guns for anything but their utilitarian purposes of hunting. Whereas in the States, we have this strongly anchored idea of, and it's funny because people don't like to talk about this that openly sometimes, but it's like,
right.
It's the idea is if a government tries to infringe upon the rights of the people, that government can be overthrown with the weapons that the people possess. And so we have, that's our Second Amendment idea. So we have really, if I'm just going to be frank about it, weapons of war that we keep in our homes as what many of us see as like a patriotic duty. And that's just that doesn't exist in Canada. In the same way that like we have our First Amendment for free speech. People often don't think about it, but like Canada does not have that. Canada has a strong free speech ethos,
yes.
But obviously it's been challenged in recent years, and it's not a constitutional thing. So we have that First and Second Amendment thing we're pretty stodgy about down here. But so anyway, that said, some of the guns that you've been exposed to down here, you would just probably never see up there, right? Like people wouldn't have an AR-15 in their house up there usually.
Right. Nor Glocks.
Nor Glocks, right?
So coming here to be with you, Daniel, it was such an awakening for me in a sense to a culture that I didn't know anything about. I didn't understand. And now seeing the way in which there's so much reverence, respect. Are those the correct words I'm looking for? Like it's really, you've taught me the importance of being able to protect ourselves if, God forbid, something were to happen. Mm-hmm. And I have grown to appreciate and understand that if someone were to come to our home, and I hope this never happens, and I hope I never have to use a gun in this way.
Yeah, of course.
But now I feel like, especially if you're away or I'm home alone, I know I at least have a chance at defending myself and our home if something were to happen, which I hope this never does.
Yeah, this is a tough conversation and obviously a bit of a digression from your turkey hunt, but since we're here, it's like, it's this thing where it's very easy for people to just be like, oh, that's ridiculous. Right. And then it's like, it sounds ridiculous unless you're somebody, or unless you're somebody who reads about what happens every single day. So I'm somebody who's tapped into that vein of information. So I see how routinely people die from street muggings, home invasions, accidentally getting involved in scenarios that they don't realize what they are.
Right.
Carjackings, obviously just crazed homicides and rapes. There's all these ways that people get mixed up in things, and it can be as simple as like an argument over a parking space, and you don't realize like that's a person who's ready to go all the way. And it's like, yeah, probably never going to happen, but happens every day. So it's like a fire extinguisher in the house.
Yes.
We don't intend to have a house fire.
Right.
Seatbelts in the car. We don't intend to have a car crash. And, auto insurance, home insurance, life insurance, all these kind of different things, medical insurance, like all these things that we do just in case. And then people act like if you think about protecting your most important thing, your life or the life of your loved ones, people are like, oh, that's just crazy. That's never going to happen. Right.
And I don't know that everyone or that people understand, at least for us, the amount of training and care that goes into the responsibility of having a gun in the home. You have trained me, I would say, a significant amount of hours at the range. The safety courses you've put me through to make sure I'm always following all the rules. When children come to our home, ensuring that everything is put away, locked away, we are very, very careful, with our use. And so I don't know if it's like that for everyone, but this is how you've introduced me to the culture.
Right? There's people who are real wing nuts. There's people who are probably more even more concerned about it than we are and everything in between, right? So,
Right.
because you have folks who believe your home defense gun should be locked in a safe, where I'm like, well,
How is that
that's
going to
not
help
really
with
that
this?
useful to me, home
Right.
defense scenario, but okay. So, you have this like range of ideas. But that said, well, first of all, as a tool, I want to say that the firearm to me, like you just said, it's sacred, because there's sometimes we'll make this argument that it's a tool, like a hammer's a tool, but it's like, yeah, but a hammer is not a tool to take life. Like the only job of the firearm is to take life, right? So it's a pretty sacred item.
Yeah.
And you were introduced to guns not for hunting,
Right.
but you were introduced first to guns. And I'm not really a sport shooting enthusiast. I like to shoot guns like in a defensive and in a hunting.
Yeah.
So I brought you to the range to learn to shoot pistols first.
Right.
And that's where you got real comfortable shooting Glocks, 9mm primarily. And you got really good at it. You having a pretty extensive athletic background. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but maybe you want to say a little bit about it, because you have had coaches your whole life.
Yes.
And you devoted obscene amount of hours of your childhood to training. So you're extremely coachable. And I was able to teach you really quickly.
Well, you're also an excellent coach.
Oh, thank you.
You express things in ways that are so clear and precise, and so I could really apply everything you were explaining to me, and then it just made sense. And if you follow all the instruction, then shooting accurately is doable.
Yeah.
Right. And
I've heard it described as the hardest simple thing ever.
Right.
Because it's like very simple. Like you said, if you just do those few things,
you'll shoot well.
You'll hit what you're aiming at every time. It's just overcoming the fact that you have a moderated explosion taking place in your hands. That's a little overwhelming.
Right. The nervousness, the fear, but even that was part of my athletic background as well, doing more of an extreme style sport in the last 12 years that I was competing. Being nervous was always part of the game, that fear factor a little bit. So
I've mentioned to the listeners about you being, I always brag on you being a whitewater kayaker. One thing maybe I don't often mention is that many people you trained with died, or some of the folks you trained with died doing this extremely dangerous sport you were a part of, right?
4 in the last year that I paddled. And so I got really into creeking, which is low volume rivers with steep descents, let's say, and waterfalls. Then I also got into surfing big water as well in my kayak, so big pushy water. And both of those have each their very dangerous elements. Yeah. And there's that element of needed focus, needed getting in the zone, needed really listening to the people with you who have paddled that river, let's say. There's a need to get out and scout and look at the rapid and pick your line. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how much of that experience crosses over to the teaching you were offering me in the range.
Right.
Of just,
like if you do this wrong, somebody could be hurt.
Right. Yes, exactly. And you need to take that very seriously. So I, every time we went into the range, I was in that mindset.
Right. Life or death.
Yes. And really honoring this, really taking it so seriously.
Yeah. You see how frustrated I get when we go to the range and there's people in there just blasting rounds off, and you'll see their target looks like Swiss cheese. Like they don't even know where their hits are going because there's so many holes in the targets and they're all over the place. And I have like mixed feelings, because I feel like I'm glad, because often it's people who are approaching going to the range like they might approach a random night of bowling or going to the movies. Right. It's like something fun to do, and they're doing it for camaraderie and excitement, and it's just like a one-off for the year type of thing. And I think that's great. Like I want people to get exposed to that. But I also take the training so seriously that for me, it can be frustrating to like see people who are not there with a goal and a training regimen and like know what they're doing. And so I'm so glad they're there, but I'm also like, oh geez, look at this, like these wing nuts just blasting off rounds, right? When we go, it's very purposeful. I also wanted to say there's a rapid you've talked to me about a bunch. I don't remember what river, but there was something called go left or die.
On the green.
Which is like a real thing, right? Like
Yes.
go left or actually potentially die in this rapid. And so,
And many rapids, I mean, almost every rapid has a feature like that if you go somewhere within the rapid, there are pretty serious consequences. So when, that element is there, that element of danger on the regular, you learn how to deal with that, to manage that, to keep yourself centered, to keep yourself focused, to keep yourself alert. And I think that all of that, interestingly enough, has prepared me for this week.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's amazing to see how much of an impact that part of my life has now come into play.
Yeah.
To this part of my life, to this choice
To go hunt.
Yeah.
I really relate to that because, you were there when you and I first got together. I had been really interested in food my whole life. I'd been doing food stuff in my career for a long time. I had my supplement company, Surthrival, existed for probably almost a decade by the time you and I became a couple.
Right.
I was foraging a lot and all of that, but I hadn't really gotten serious about hunting or fishing yet. I was just dipping my toes in, but when we got together, I was like, this is what I want to do for the next decade. I'm going to focus on this. And you were super supportive of that. But when I came into that world, and this is something that I've seen from, as I watch a big part of my focus is what are the barriers to entry, because I don't see myself as somebody who necessarily speaks that much to existing hunters with a lineage of hunting, but I feel like I speak more, if I had to pick one or the other, I think I speak more to people who are coming into hunting later in life,
right,
who have a more alternative background, and they find our work at WildFed inspiring, and that supports them in getting involved in it. Like I said, if somebody's lived their whole life grown up hunting, they're probably not they might like WildFed as a show, but they already know what I'm talking about. So I feel like I speak more to new folks, primarily, and that's kind of how I think about the messaging.
Yes.
And this movement of people who are interested in foods or transitioning to hunting as a way of sourcing food. That's kind of what I picture. So when I look at the barriers to entry, I see how I was able to advance really quickly for a number of reasons. One, and when I say advance quickly, I mean to be able to feed our, this is how we eat. So we're able to do that because one, I was at a place in my life where I had a career that was really stable, and I had the free time and the disposable income to devote myself to it. And that was an advantage that I had. But I had spent all these years doing things in the outdoors, mountaineering, hiking, canoeing, paddling, surfing,
right.
I had lifeguarded and been on a search and rescue team and done EMS and firefighting and all those kind of things that exposed me to all these kind of core survival type skills and competency. I'd been shooting for a long time.
Right.
So I was really comfortable with guns and the manipulation of firearms and how to utilize those. So that was already there. I had a good ecological background, an anatomical background. So I had all these things that I already done. So when I stepped into it, it was it was very simple. It was now all I have to do is add the animal in. Yeah. And I think similar for you, because you were just saying all of those things transfer. There's a skill transfer. But for you in particular, you were used to high intensity situations where ultimate focus was required or death could ensue. And so because a lot of folks I've watched, one of the barriers to entry is when they're in that situation where they're finally able to press a trigger on an animal, they're overwhelmed with they're not stress inoculated. Right. So the high heart rate, the tunnel
adrenaline.
Vision, the fingers start feeling like balloons. Everything's going wah, 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 wah. And they're looking through basically a drinking straw at what they're trying to do.
Right.
And you seemed, even though you were in that peak experience, I could tell that you were comfortable in that. And even not just comfortable, but that you were back in your zone.
Thriving a little bit, feeling lit up.
Yeah.
It was very familiar to me, that zone. I describe it as a zone. And my analogies are going to often reference paddling, but there's a feeling when you paddle out into a rapid after you've done everything to prepare there's no turning back. You can't.
Yeah, there's no turning back.
You can't suddenly decide, I don't want to do this anymore. So it's accessing that place of confidence, and this is happening. I am doing this, and I'm going to give it my best.
You cannot get distracted. You cannot let your mind wander.
Right.
I mean, with hunting, even you can just put the gun on safe and decide you're not going to shoot. I mean, you don't have to fall.
That's true.
Like
you're right.
paddling,
You could turn back.
Like what you were doing was, there we have that photo on the fridge of you. I think you're in the Grand Canyon in that picture, right? You're in all that whitewater.
The one on the photo, I'm actually in Tennessee on the Ocoee River.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in like heavy whitewater, and you can just see you're surrounded by
water,
by really pushy water, right? There's like nothing you can do except just stay on your line and survive it, right? Like that's it. Like you're not really in control except for like being able to keep your course, right?
Right. And all the skills that you've worked, all the strokes, all the strengthening that you've done, all of the, let's say, easier rapids that you've paddled to work those skills all comes into play in that moment. And I felt the day that we hunted together that everything that you have guided me on in these last 7 years, came into play. And you're right. I could have chosen in that moment to look at you and say, I can't do this. But that never even crossed my mind. I think that all of my experiences being out on the river then did in that moment, I treated it that way. Yeah. As soon as I saw the turkey come into view, for me, I was in that zone. Yeah. And it was about lining my sights up, waiting for the right moment, and then making it happen. Yeah. And there was such a clarity there for me. And do I ever miss being in that space? I think you were asking me what my journey has been getting here to this moment. And I was speaking of my grandfather and so forth as a child, and then coming here and becoming more familiar with guns and learning about them. And I think all of this.
And seeing a lot of. Sorry, I'm going.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Seeing a lot over the years of like blood and gore, like me coming in the house covered in blood, like especially, like a lot of deer where there's just a huge, a turkey's not a huge volume of blood to deal with, but with a deer where you've got liters of blood to deal with, and so I'll come in like, you've seen some stuff that affects your limbic system if you're not exposed to it, like puts you in an emotional state. So you've had inoculation to a lot of this stuff over the last several years. Yeah, and I think little bits here and there.
I think I needed 7 years to get to this point because I always felt so respected by you. I never felt you were judging me for not wanting to hunt. For me, it was like I knew for you were always like, it's okay, Avani, don't worry about it. If ever you feel to one day, I'll be there for you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, that's okay too. And our way, right, throughout these 7 years was I would support in other ways, preparing the space, cleaning up afterwards, really encouraging you, supporting you when you wanted to go out many early mornings or go to bed super early. It's just like, it was always yes, because you were providing for us too. And I also saw how lit up you would become from these experiences and how healthy that is, right? That we each have our things going in our life, and that's a beautiful way to really support and honor your partner. Yeah. And, so I still felt part of the hunt throughout these 7 years, but I just never had the inclination to hunt.
And you'd been with me on, we'd done a lot of squirrel hunting together, which is featured in episode, in the squirrel episode of season 2 of the WildFed TV show. So, and you've been with me when I've shot a duck and a little bits here and there.
Float the deer across our beaver pond. Yeah,
so little bits of exposure here and there. So it wasn't like you had never, it wasn't like you'd come out of like Montreal, you'd never been out of the city to see any of these things. And so you'd had like little bits of inoculation to it.
Paddling the canoe while you're hunting as well. Yeah.
But this was really interesting. So let's go to, there was a moment a couple weeks ago where you just came to me and were like, I want a turkey hunt, I'm ready.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, hunting is as ancient as humanity itself. And through most of our history, it wasn't just about the physical pursuit, it was a spiritual one too. One of the ways human beings came to understand ourselves and our place in the wild world that sustained us. Hunting is still an incredible tool for personal transformation today, helping you discover more about yourself, your environment, the animals you share the world with, and even helping you develop a deeper understanding of life and death itself. Hunting can help you find your place in the community of life. But you could hunt all your life and never find that kind of transformation. It takes deliberate practice, awareness, and sometimes even initiation. That's why my friend Monsell Denton created Sacred Hunting. Sacred Hunting brings new or even experienced hunters out onto the landscape to stalk, harvest, and field dress animals in a retreat-type setting, in conjunction with sweat lodges, entheogenic plant medicine ceremonies, and strong intention setting that prepares hunters for a lifelong spiritual relationship with themselves, the land, and the animals they hunt. If you want to hunt as a tool for transformation, check out sacredhunting.com. Monsell and his team will guide you through beginner hunts, and more experienced hunters will find unique opportunities available across the country and globe. There's only a few spots available on each hunt, so go to sacredhunting.com and complete their 2-minute application. Discounts are available if you let them know you heard about them on the WildFed podcast. Again, go to sacredhunting.com and learn more about Monsell and Sacred Hunting on episode 59 of the WildFed podcast. Now, back to the show.
My strategy and pro tip to the guys out there who, or I guess to anybody whose partner doesn't express interest in hunting and you're really into it, is like you said, never make the person feel guilty. Don't try to push it. Don't try to press it. I just left it alone. And it wasn't like I left it alone and that was my strategy to get you into it. It was like, if you never did, I was like really okay with that.
Right.
But the second you said you wanted to, it was like, well, it's on. Let's do this together, you know?
So interesting for me too. It wasn't something I had been reflecting on for a while. For me, I knew it was going to suddenly either become like a, yes, I want to do this, or no, I'm going to continue the way I am. And if you were to ask me what it was, I can't give you a precise answer. It's just, I one day knew I wanted to try this. I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to be challenged. I think it's a way to stay young, right? Mm-hmm. To learn new skills. Yeah, absolutely. To do things that scare you a little bit. I think it's a way to keep yourself sharp. And I use this often, but really like lit up about life. And a couple of weeks ago, really, it wasn't that long ago, right? It was just a few weeks before the season started. I came to you and said, yeah, I'm ready to do this. Yeah. And I was scared. I was super nervous, but checking in with myself every day, really like sitting every morning with my coffee and asking myself, is this something you really want to do? Is this something you really want to do? And each day was yes. Yes, there was no doubt. It was like all of a sudden I made up my mind and then, okay, it's time.
And the unique challenge you set yourself up for, well, two actually, because we had bred our dog. I had taken Ellie to Vermont. And so her due date was the 5th of May.
Yeah.
Turkey season opened, I want to say May 2nd.
Yeah.
For, 2 days before that, on the Saturday, there had been the youth day, but we can't participate in that. So it was on Monday the 2nd. And I took a shooting class in Ohio. John Hearn's cognitive pistol class was amazing. So I was gone, planning to be home Monday, and I would start hunting Tuesday is what I thought.
Right.
But, of course, given the fact that we live in the new Great Depression and the airlines are absolutely just a total cluster, I didn't get it. Didn't work out. Yeah, I lost a day in the airport. Right. I came home exhausted. Ellie's like
on the verge
of birthing, and at the same time we got greenlit for the 3rd season of WildFed.
Right.
So immediately this turns into, we want to film your hunt. So now it's your first hunt, and we're going to film it, and it's going to be about how you like eating turkey meat and
Yes.
you want to get more turkey and you're going to take this on. So to be followed with 2 cameras on your first hunt is a whole added
Element.
component,
Yes, component
stress
there.
component to it.
It's true. And luckily we had such a solid team for this hunt
exactly.
with Grant and
Chris,
Christian.
yeah.
And I felt so comfortable around all of you, felt really supported. And so that actually, I thought it might affect how it would feel out there in the morning and thinking there's the pressure of the filming, but that was okay as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also from competing a lot, I'm okay
Spectators.
with spectators and working under extreme pressure situations.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I actually thrive a little bit in that way. I like to perform.
Yeah.
It's been a part of my life since I'm small. You know, with being a synchronized swimmer, you're really performing, and then
Truly performing.
yes, and then with kayaking too, there's always a huge spectator audience.
You also did a very unique thing. You taught for a traveling high school for whitewater kayakers, right?
Yeah.
And so you traveled around not just the country. I mean, you guys went to New Zealand, right? You went around the world. So you've got students with you. You're camping every single night, living out of like a van and tents. And you're wrangling cats, basically, all these kids on rivers. So you're used to the pressure of like multiple people, like trying to keep track of everybody and
responsible for them.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's
Yeah.
it. Because in a sense that I was imagining like all these children have moms at home and dads, you know, wanting their children to be safe and to come home safely. And so for that entire year, it's this vigilance of making sure everybody is well and taken care of and safe. So I enjoy working with a team, and that part felt exciting to me.
Yeah.
The morning of going out, those few mornings we went out this week.
Right.
I mean, like you're saying, it was quite an adventure with all of the components that we were dealing with the pups and lack of sleep. But
And then before we hunted, I thought about how to get you feeling. I wanted you to feel really confident when we first went out. And I was thinking back to what my first hunt was like.
Right.
And I was thinking, what would have made this, what could make you feel what would be the most like confidence building thing we could do? And so I just started thinking about my own training. So I just mentioned some of the things that I've done over the years. You know, so I brought up EMS. So, and I don't want to give the impression I worked much as a firefighter or as an EMT. I mean, I just very small amount. I just did these things mostly for my own learning and experiential growth. But so I'm not like one of a career, that's like a type of person, and I'm not that type of person. But I love that kind of thing. So, all right, in EMS as an example, you don't just go and do didactics, learn like out of the book. You do scenario-based training. So what you need, and this has gotten better and better over the years. So we'll have a scenario where they use makeup and fake blood, and they'll set up a whole scenario, and you come in and there's a person with what looks like a wound, bleeding, or whatever it is, or they're faking a medical, and you got to come in and you got to problem solve that with stresses around you that feel real, so that you have an immersive scenario to stress inoculate you.
Right.
In firefighting, same thing. Sit in a building, they light it on fire, you go through the experience so that you're inoculated to it when you have the real experience. In the shooting world, I've done a lot of what's called Forceonforce. That's where you have real guns shooting bullets that are real projectiles fired with a real powder charge, but they're pieces of soap that hit you, they hurt, they cut you, you get welted, you end up in firefights, and you experience the stress of that, and they make it as real as possible. So, done a lot of that kind of training, and I thought, what a cool idea. Let's try to bring that to your first hunting experience. So what I did was set up a scenario in our backyard.
This was amazing.
I put out turkeys. I put out turkey decoys. You and I got dressed in full ghillie suit camouflage, just like we did for the hunt.
Yeah.
We got positioned against a backdrop, just like we would for the hunt. And I put out 2 logs, and this will be in the episode. People get to see this, which is really cool. But I had like a piece of beach So like a brown kind of, log like you put in the fireplace, and then set on top of it a white birch log.
Yeah.
And I had been telling you your target on the turkey is basically where the feathers meet the skin, right? At the wattle. So the idea was I want you to shoot where the two logs meet, where the white log meets the brown log. And that was right?
Yes.
So I set that out at probably about 25 yards. And we got in full position.
Yep.
And I did turkey calls, like as if I was calling, and I had a tom call to simulate that turkey coming in. And we went through the realest hunt I could make.
Yep.
And I was like, he's coming in. I'm like, gobble, 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 gobble. And that whole thing. And then you shot, and that was your first time shooting the shotgun.
Yes, it
the
was.
12 gauge. So you had to shoot the log.
Right.
And you, of course, hit perfectly, knocked the birch log down, and I even had a tag prepared for you to go over and put a tag on the birch log. Like I wanted to give you the most real scenario you could experience. So I wanted to hear a little bit about how that all landed and how it felt like from a confidence building perspective.
It was excellent preparation. I think I felt more nervous that day than I did
on the actual hunt
because it was my first time shooting this gun, so I didn't know how it was going to react.
Yeah.
I didn't know if all the training I had done would apply to this gun. Mm-hmm. I know you told me that you told me it would, but it's still like until you do it yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was nervous about being accurate.
Yeah.
I think it was just that the first time feelings.
Sure.
And as you
also,
said,
like shooting standing up at the range is really different than shooting in a lazy boy recliner position with the gun sitting on your knee the way you do for a turkey hunt. So, it's a completely different body arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember asking you, like, come on, Daniel, do I really need to wear the ghillie suit? And you were like, yes, you have to wear the ghillie suit. I'm like, okay, because you wanted it to be so accurate in how it would feel.
Well, also because I want you to know, like, is there an issue with this ghillie suit? What if it gets caught? Like, I want you to feel all the things. It's like in the shooting world, a lot of times, like guys get so obsessed with gear, and then you get out on the range and you do a full day of stuff, and you realize your gear's stupid, or it doesn't work, or your stuff falls out. We call it a yard sale, where all your stuff falls out on the floor. Like, you need to put stuff in practice so you know if it works. Now, I know those ghillie suits work and all of that, but I wanted you to experience shooting with that mask on so that when you're in the field the first time, you're not like, oh man, this is like in my eyes, or this feels weird. I wanted you to know, like, I didn't want there to be any novel stimuli except the turkey.
Yeah. Right. And so that was fantastic. And I shot one shot, right? And
knocked him. Remember your breathing and just, it got intense. It felt real.
I was shaking a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember after being so relieved, like, okay, I can do this, because I think, part of this too for me is wondering if I can do this. Mm-hmm. Right. And then, so that scenario you set up for me was, okay, I still haven't hunted a moving target, a living target, not knowing how that's going to feel, but having that practice scenario really allowed me to see, like, okay, I can handle these aspects of it. I can shoot the gun. I can handle it. So I remember after feeling so relieved, I remember like folding over, in half, I folded over like, oh, okay, I did it. And
big exhale.
But wow, really, having done that, the first morning we went out hunting together, the first morning of this hunt, I felt really grateful that we had done
that.
Yeah, I felt ready to shoot the gun. I trusted that my sights worked. Mm-hmm. I trusted that, as you say in the range, if I shoot at the target, it's because I've done everything right. It's not a fluke. If you hit
the target, it's because you've done everything
right.
Sorry,
if I hit the target right, it's because I've done everything right. It's
even
not
if you didn't mean to.
Right.
Like sometimes somebody gets a bullseye, they didn't even mean to.
But they did everything right.
In that moment, they did everything right, even if it was unintentionally.
I always have that in my mind. Mm-hmm. So
similar, can I just say something similar? This is just for the listener. If you miss the target, whatever you hit, that's where you were aiming. I mean, it's like that people need to get that. It's like your sights were lined up, but just on the wrong place, right?
Exactly.
That's where that round went.
And I'll often say to you, I know as I'm pushing the trigger, pulling the trigger.
I like
know
pressing.
pressing.
I like most people say pulling,
Okay.
but pulling to me sounds a bit like jerking, or like pulling seems like, I like pressing because it sounds like a very deliberate thing, or pulling, but you are pulling it obviously, but I like saying pressing, like you're pressing a button.
Makes sense. So I know at the range when I'm off, as I'm pressing the trigger. I know I'm not gonna. I'm usually not off by that much, but I still, I'm like, okay, I could feel things weren't.
It's the ability to call your shots though too. That's like an advanced skill. So it's like, okay, I think that's going to be high around, that's going to be at like 11 o'clock on the target where I meant to hit it, like trying to track where were my sights when I pressed the trigger before you see the bullet hole, so that you start to dial in like what you're diagnostically what you're doing. Right.
Yep. And that day that we shot the birch log, everything was aligned. Yeah. Yeah. So I felt confident.
I remember you too, because something I keep trying to impress upon you is like, when you have good pistol skills, it totally translates to long guns, shotguns or rifles or carbines. But if you shoot long guns, that does not translate well to pistols. Pistols, you have 2 points of contact.
Right.
Ideally, your 2 hands, and a very small sighting radius. So you have like the sights that are very close together on a very short muzzle, a short barrel. So you need to be perfect to hit well with a pistol. With a long gun, you have 4 points of contact. So you have your cheek on the gun, you have your shoulder on the gun, you have 2 hands on the gun. The gun has a really long sighting radius. You're in this case, you have a gun on your knee, so you have this incredible stability. It is just so much easier to shoot a long gun. So and you had gotten very good with your 9mm and my 9mm, but also I have a 10mm Glock, a Glock 20. That's a very powerful cartridge. I mean, people carry that as grizzly bear protection, and you shoot that just as well as you shoot a 9mm. So you were nervous of the 12 gauge because it's like the 12 gauge is like the mythical big boomstick, but as you saw, it was the same for you as shooting a pistol.
Yeah, it didn't, and I don't mean this to sound cocky. It didn't faze me. Once I did prior to shooting it. I was extremely nervous. But then when I shot it, I felt very comfortable. Yeah.
And again, like just to reiterate, from a neuroscience perspective, you were comfortable in the clothing you were going to wear.
Yep.
You were comfortable in that seated position with the gun, how it was. The decoys were out just like they were when we went hunting.
Yep.
You heard all of the calls just like you would. So none of that was novel. So the idea of like sitting down to your first turkey hunt and everything around you is novel, and you're trying to take all that in while thinking about shooting and thinking about the animal and all of the stress around that. It's like, it's nice if you can remove all of that novelty so that you just have one task to focus on. So I felt like that really worked. And you ended up, that day you had CrossFit. So you split to go to CrossFit. Grant and I stayed back, and he was uploading the footage. We were working and whatnot. And we just kept looking at each other and sincerely being like, dude, that was a good hunt. That was so interesting because it was so real feeling that he and I, who've hunted together a lot and hunted together a lot on camera and hunted a lot around the country together, we felt like we had been on a hunt. And that was very powerful for me to realize, like, and you know how they say, and you know this from athletics, really good visualization, like your brain doesn't know the difference between real and the visualization if you do it right.
Yep.
My brain didn't really know the difference between that and an actual turkey hunt. It just felt like a turkey hunt. That was very cool to me.
It was really cool for me to see how excited you and Grant were after.
Yeah.
And I then felt that excitement too. And again, just, comparing it to kayaking, it's that feeling when you get to the end of a river, your team, and you all look at each other and say, we did that. And I got that feeling with you all. And I thought, wow, there's a nice camaraderie here.
Yeah.
It was part of it.
When we actually set out to hunt, and I like to take this like mission approach to it.
Yep.
I'm extremely goal oriented when I hunt. I'm not somebody who's like, oh, I just want to be out there all month walking in the woods. I'm just not. I'm very target focused. And so it's like I go out there with a mission. I'm not always successful, but the plan is to be successful. I plan to be successful. So, and I take this like mission approach. And as you know, as a team leader, I want to make sure that we have our shits dialed in.
Yeah.
So we had 3 days of hunting. I don't want to go into the whole story, but I want to skip to the third day because we went to 3 locations.
Right.
The first day, well, maybe for the sake of it, we'll say that the first day was cool because we were hunting a bird in a big field. We had permission to be in this one spot where there was a good tom in the field. But there's just this thing about field birds is that because everyone driving by can see them, how many people are like, well, I'm hunting that bird on opening day. And those field birds get used to decoys and calls, and they're pretty good at staying alive if they've been in that field for any length of time. So we got to spend a morning watching a bird, interacting with him, watching him strut, calling and getting him calling back and all those kind of things, but we could never get him in range, right?
Right. Just the hens. The hens came in.
Yeah, the hens came right to our decoys.
Yeah.
And once they realized they were decoys, they were out of there.
Yeah.
Which... that was interesting because sometimes they come in and they can't seem to figure it out. And like I've told you, I've had hens attack my decoys so that the only thing that got them to stop, I mean, like I'm talking a half an hour, like the only thing that got them to stop was me shooting the tom and them being like, oh, I'm out of here now. Right. But like where it was like, are they going to spend an hour attacking this thing, 2 hours, But these birds went in, saw them, split. But anyway, you got to be exposed to live birds that day. So that was cool.
Yeah. And I remember saying to you, whoa, the hens moved quickly. Yeah. And I that made me a little bit nervous thinking, how am I going to hit this tom if he's moving that quickly?
Yeah.
But
and something I kept trying to impress upon you was because you have not shot the shotgun at a paper target. So you haven't got to see, and the thing about a shotgun is there's so many loads.
Right.
From let's say a double-aught buck, which is 8 or 9 pellets depending on the load. So that's 8 or 9 holes that it's going to make in the target. They're fairly good size holes, like 30 caliber holes, to something that might have 60 pellets that are small. So you got to see on the log you shot that there was a lot of little holes.
Right.
But in my mind, I know that there's a cone of pellets coming out that's expanding as it gets further and further from the muzzle. So that's the whole reason we hunt birds with them, because birds move so quickly that we're not shooting that single projectile. So you're used to going to the range shooting a single projectile, and if you're off by a little bit, you miss the target.
And you've trained me so
to be very
accurately on this. Yes.
Precision, right?
Yeah,
Surgical
precision.
shooting.
Yeah.
But you were like, oh, they move really fast. And I was like, don't worry about it because you're shooting a cone of pellets. So it accounts for them moving, right? Like if he's 3 inches away, your spread at 25 yards is going to be like 9 to 15 inches of pellets. Like you're going to still strike him. But anyway, that day you got exposed to birds. So you got to see what they look like coming in, moving, on all of that. So that was really cool.
Yeah, figuring out my position as well. Just, we're talking about the journey of me getting to this morning where we were successful. And so it's like, okay, the 7 years of being around you hunting, seeing you bring game home, being part of it in the ways that I was. And then the training component, going to the range, then the birch log, hunt. And then it was those 2 mornings prior to the morning we were successful were key for me as well. I really loved that we had those mornings where I got to figure out my position against, you call the back.
Backstop. In those cases, trees.
Yeah.
When we did in the practice run, it was a big rock. Either one will work. Something that masks your silhouette, so you're not silhouetted against the skyline or something like that.
Yeah, and feeling, the transition from night to day.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Having the nature wake up, or the shift change, as you call it. The birds start to tweet, and it's just the sun is gradually coming up, and all of that, it's all new. It's all new in that moment, the way it's coming together. So it was so valuable for me to have 2 mornings to just feel all of these things, and to feel you next to me, to understand how that would be, and our team around us. So I'm grateful. Really grateful for those 2 mornings.
And a little behind the scenes for people too. So we had 2 cameras plus you plus me.
Yeah.
So the second day when we set up, we were just too far from, there was toms. We heard 3 that morning, but we were just a little too far away. And I was expressing to you, like, if it's just me, I'm a really aggressive turkey hunter. So if I hear those toms are 400 yards away or something like they sounded like to me that day, maybe a couple hundred yards away, I'm getting up and I'm moving. And I'm going to get as close as I can. I'm going to do it stealthily. I'm going to try to get in there and get near them. But a couple of components here. One, moving 4 people against very hypervigilant birds, it's just too complicated. Second thing is, we had gone in the nights before to our locations and groomed the spots because we need to get 4 people in quietly, and we need safe shooting angles for the gun and the cameras, right? So we've got Christian in one spot, we've got Grant on the long lens in another spot. They've got to be well hidden. So they're in full ghillie suits. Grant's on a tripod with a long lens, so he's got 3D camouflage completely covering his camera. We'd leave the tripod in place the night before and go in. This is hard stuff to do on the fly, the idea of all 4 of us trying to sneak in, and maybe we even make it happen, but the cameras don't get the shots or something. So we sat in that spot for hours. And you also got to experience, like, because I was very serious about, guys, we need to be quiet. We need to have movement discipline, and in particular in the morning, light discipline. But then you kind of learn, like, okay, it can be pretty casual if we know the birds are far away. Yeah. It gets more serious when we know they're close. And you saw that on the first day too, where it's like the birds are, if I can see the birds and I know they're 200 yards away, and he's asked to me, I don't mind getting out, a snack and eating and chatting with you a little bit. He can't hear us. Yeah, giggling a little. But I get much more serious about it as it gets closer. And stuff. But you got to experience in those 2 days sitting for hours in those positions and playing with, hey, it's time to be quiet, or hey, we have a little more wiggle room right now, and that kind of thing too.
And how to position my gun while we're in more rest mode, finding a comfortable position for that and transitioning into being prepared
to shoot.
Yeah. And that was all great.
I was big on you, big about having that gun on your knee.
Yep.
Because
to transfer.
It so frequently happens to people that bird comes in and now the gun's on the ground because you didn't feel like he was close, and now he's so close that if you pick up the gun, he's gone before you could even fire. So I like to have it where the amount of movement I need to actually put a shot on him is really, really little.
You also had me work the safety, to practice taking the safety off very as silently as possible.
Isn't it weird? Wouldn't you expect that gun manufacturers would make silent safeties?
Right.
Like all of my bolt actions are like that. It's a big loud click. The Benelli, which is a very high-end shotgun we're shooting, the Benelli Super Black Eagle 3, it's a very nice shotgun. Pretty loud click when you move that safety, so you have to grab the safety from either side and then just gently ease it over to try to not make a sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so seeing like, okay, it's could happen now, bring the gun off safe. Oh, he's gotten out of range, I'm going to go back to safe. Like we're kind of toggling back and forth based on the scenario.
Yeah, and then I also took the opportunity both those mornings to practice lining up my sights on different
I noticed you aiming at the
objects around me.
Yeah, a lot of times at the decoys, like practicing and imagining the decoys to be real and lining up shots when there was nothing else going on.
Yeah, at trees and so forth. So for me, it was a way to prepare for the morning.
Yeah,
big morning,
which is brilliant visualization.
Yeah,
dry fire practice. Throughout this whole time, we had puppies at the house.
Yes.
I mean, we had...
So sweet.
That's a whole nother story, but what a saga we went through, right? And we found... so God bless the 3 folks who came to help us. So shout out to Kendall, to Ian, and to Paul.
Yes.
Who came to our house at 3 a.m. and stayed
puppy
until
sit.
We came home to puppy sit, for us, because these pups were like in their really small, vulnerable stage, and
they were champions. Really, to have people in your life who would be willing
to do that,
to wake up themselves at let's say 2:30 to get to our home.
In Kendall's case, I mean, it's a full 45-minute drive to get to us.
Right.
Yeah. So texting people and being like, "Hey,
any chance
you'd come to our house at 3 a.m. and hang out all day." That was really cool that people were willing to help us like that. But so there was like quite a bit of going on for us, because those first 2 nights when she gave birth, we didn't really sleep.
No.
And then we went right into getting up at about 2 a.m., You might even been getting up a little earlier, 1:30.
1:30
to be out of the house by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because, hunting is one thing. Hunting with a camera crew is a whole nother thing.
And hunting with puppies at home
Is a
whole
third thing
other
altogether. So the third day was cool because we have a friend who owns an incredible piece of property.
Right.
Which he's pretty covetous of hunting because it's really set up for deer hunting. So he's got, I think it's about 2,500 acres. It's pretty posh. He's got a lot of feeders, a lot of stands, a lot of food plots. It's optimized for getting really good white-tailed deer. But as a result, there's turkeys there too. And he's not that into that.
Yeah.
So he gives us permission to hunt it in the spring, gave me permission, and said we could film in there. So we went there the third day, and he's got probably, I'm guessing, about 2-3 miles of private road in there. Mm-hmm. So we're behind a gate when we get in there. And we know we could drive pretty close to where we'd set up. We'd gone in the night before and groomed the spot, but that was a fun morning because we went in under night vision.
Right.
And the road it's a mountain road, so it's pretty steep with like this big views and scary drop-offs.
Which is, especially scary to me because I just have a fear of that, right?
Yeah,
it's like I can go off waterfalls in a kayak, but the edges of roads for some reason
Freak you out.
really freak me out.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. So, that scenario of I'm wearing my night vision and you, Chris, and Grant are in the FJ with me, and it's
see.
dark for you guys, like full pitch dark black, right?
Yeah.
But I can see perfectly. So I'm driving these very vertical. We're going uphill, very steep, very windy, and you guys are like, you can see, right? Like you can see, like very. But I don't want to come in with headlights on because I know that Tom is sitting. I know those birds are sitting up in a pine tree,
right,
and they're going to see headlights rolling in, and it's like I know they're still going to hear the truck, but it's better if they don't see those lights. And so I drove us up to a position, of course, like left the night vision behind in the car, and then we walked into our spot.
Yeah.
But that was really cool. I love that mission feel of we're all dressed in camouflage. We're rolling in with night vision. It's very fun, right? Like
solid team. By morning 3, we were all on our game.
Everybody knew what they're doing.
Yeah.
Everybody had positions already set up. Like we said, Grant's tripod's already in place. So we got set up. We get the decoys out, and right off the morning just starts off with gobble, 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 gobble. We're hearing the spring thunder up in the trees, right? Like those birds. And there was a sense that day it was going to happen, huh?
I felt it from when we woke up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really cool.
And I was hoping it wasn't just wishful feelings, but I woke, I'd actually slept that night. The night before, for the second morning, I sincerely didn't even sleep 1 minute. So I had slept the night before and woke up feeling great, even if it was just a few hours of sleep. And I felt like I woke up in the zone. Yeah.
Well, even the night before going to bed, I remember you had this confident step about you that I could see. That, so, I mean, we were prepared to keep going if we needed to, but, we got into a good conversation with that bird. And as you saw, it was a toggle between me running, I had 3 calls. So I had my mouth call, which is I can project pretty far. A lot of guys use a box call for that because it can carry pretty far, but I'm pretty loud with that mouth call, so the little diaphragm call. So I was reaching out with the diaphragm call, doing a hen cutting sound and just trying to get his attention. And we were getting callbacks, but those birds were hanging up. Like they didn't really want to come up there. You remember, like they were sort of down a little ways in that big open area.
Yeah. And
they didn't want to come up to where we were. And that's where I start running the tom call. So what I would do is point the tom call behind me. So it sounded like he was like, I don't want to point it toward them. I want to make it sound like he's coming in from the other direction, 180 degrees from them, because he also hears the hen. That's what I'm trying to set up, is this sense of like, if you don't get up here, this other tom's coming in to your territory to breed this hen.
Yeah.
And they didn't like that. And as they got closer, I'd run that small, what was that called? Like the Quaker boy, that little, little Grant, it's a Grant's call. He loaned it to me.
Yeah.
It's a great call because it has all of those gentle purrs. It's much more subtle. And it's real quiet, but it's the sounds that hens make when you're in close to them. You hear all those sounds. So as they were getting closer, I was running that. Now, Christian was amazing. I want to give him a shout out here. Obviously, Grant's amazing too. He's capturing this footage. But Christian, it was his first time hunting with us.
Yeah.
And he was told, because he's filming you and I, his back is to the hunt the entire time, and he is not allowed to move or turn around. So he's just got to birds are coming in behind him. All this is going on, and he's not allowed to look. Yeah. That was pretty wild to,
He was grateful you had prepared him for that. Mm-hmm. You had told him, to just, it's going to be hard, Christian, it's going to be hard, but you can't
But even on the first day, he never saw those birds.
No.
We spent probably 5 hours looking at those birds. He never saw them. He's like, at one point I could kind of hear him. I was like, oh man, you poor guy. So same kind of deal. He's facing us. Grant's up the hill, tucked in with that long lens. And
you're working the art of calling. To me, I see it as an art. And again, want to say I'm so grateful you were there to assist with that component, because that must be the next stage, right? Where I'd be able, in theory, next year to do both myself. But it was
But it's
amazing.
nice to have a caller for you so you can just focus on your thing. And I mean, for me, it's fun. I could
see you were enjoying it.
Super fun, So I remember, because I was off to your right sitting, that was another nice component, something I had shared with you the first day, is I'm not used to getting to cuddle with my wife. Wow. You and I are shoulder to shoulder, snuggled into each other. That was pretty neat. And I think both of us in the 3D camo, those ghillie tops and hoods, look even more camouflaged than if you're just one person. So we're this big blob of mossy, leafy looking stuff. And but we're snuggled all kind of nice and cozy together. And
it helped with warmth too, those first
fantastic.
2 days. First 2 days,
And it's just nice at that time of day, I'm used to being in bed next to you anyway. So, but I could see that I saw him first because of the angle we were at. So I'm calling, I see him come in, but then I remember this moment where you were like, I see him.
Yeah.
And you just went into a whole nother mental state.
A whole different state. After hearing you first say, he's coming, or what did you say? I see him.
Yeah.
Then I knew it was a Jake or a Tom. And that's all I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to shoot a hen. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I heard you say he, I was set. And then I do remember when he came into my line of vision saying, I see him. Mm-hmm. And the adrenaline started pumping, and I was working my breathing we had practiced to keep myself calm. I know I was just moving my eyes to watch him being so still. I didn't want to do anything to affect this negatively or to disappoint you in any way, of course. And I wanted to be successful, being so still, getting into position, taking the safety off, getting ready. And he came to the decoys, right? And then he turned around the hens did that first morning.
But even more, he was more cautious than the hens.
Yeah.
He got to those decoys. He got about 12 inches probably from the decoys, and then he just turned around he was like, I'm not feeling comfortable here.
Right. And I guess in theory, I could have shot him as he was approaching the decoys.
Well, we were kind of waiting to see what he was going to do.
I was waiting, and he hadn't stopped yet. You told me there's a good chance that they, move a little slower. He might stop and assess the situation.
Might display. Right? Stop display. And when they display, I always call them the teacup ride on at the fair. They start to spin in place and get all puffy and spin in place and stuff.
Yeah. So. Yeah. He turned around and started walking out, and I thought, oh no, he's not getting away from us. And so I had to adjust my angle a little bit because he had started to move out, and he paused for a moment. And I know now you're telling me you were still speaking to me very gently in that time, but I don't remember hearing anything you said past here he is, or here he comes.
Well, at some point, I was telling, I don't remember how I said it, but there was a point of you can just shoot when you feel comfortable too, so.
And I think I felt that from you. I felt the support, and I could feel from us.
You're just authorized to shoot though too,
Yeah. And wow, I did everything you taught me, lined up the sights, found the spot. And there was, again, I want to say just a clarity, a knowing that was the moment, really paying attention to my position, my hands, everything, getting my finger on the trigger,
well, yeah.
in the trigger well. And then that was it. It was like, I was worried that I was going to hesitate. Like I've done at the range a few times, especially at the beginning where I'd get nervous to shoot. Remember, there's been a few moments where it's taken me several seconds.
And it's very common. Like you put a gun in somebody's hand, you have them point at the target, you go, shoot now. They don't immediately press the trigger.
Right.
There's like a lot of hesitation and slow creep as you pull the trigger to the rear and all of that. So that's common.
I would say that when I had my sights lined up and I knew like in the right position, to me, it was like I was in the rapid. There was absolutely no turning back there. And it happened. And it was, wow, it was powerful.
When you fired, one of your big concerns was, because I was saying to you, hey, we're not going to wear your hearing protection, which you've always, and I guess for a little more context, when we go to the range, we shoot often at an indoor range, and we wear plugs in our ear canals, and then we wear muff-style plugs, hearing protection over those.
Yeah.
So we're wearing 2 layers. Now, one reason is because inside that indoor environment, the sound of gunfire is extremely loud, and it can make it hard shooting because every time you're lining up your sights and you're ready to press one off, somebody else's rounds are going off, and it can give you a startle flinch. And in particular, as you've seen when guys come in with carbines, so they're shooting in ARs or even 308s, it's like,
really
man, they're pretty loud. So we always double up our hearing protection. Well, here I am telling you you're not going to be wearing hearing protection, and you were like, I don't really like that. Yeah. And I was trying to say to you, you'll be amazed at how your body occludes your own ears because it knows there's going to be a shot, and how that somehow it's called auditory exclusion in literature. This is something that's discussed, particularly you see it in military and law enforcement studies, where it's like people don't hear the gunshots. Or they don't hear them in that loud, damaging to your eardrum kind of way. Now, you slipped a plug into your left ear, so your right ear on my side of you was open.
I have just sensitivity from paddling, from getting lots of water in my ear for many years, and I just don't want to do anything else to that yet.
Which I think is great. But I was also trying to tell you, hey, you're going to want your hearing because of the subtlety of the calls and stuff. And sometimes the only way you know a Tom's coming in is his footsteps, because he doesn't necessarily always call on his way in. So... anyway, the point is, it was really interesting because afterward you reported back that you don't really remember a loud gunshot.
At all.
Yeah.
I remember the feeling. I remember the quickness in which it occurred. I don't know why you sometimes, for some reason, I know how quick a bullet hits the target, but... once I pressed the trigger, everything happened obviously very quickly. It's an understatement, but I don't remember hearing anything loud, powerful. I do remember the feeling and then the elation after.
Because I remember watching feathers just blast out the backside of his neck.
Didn't see that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
And then when we watched the footage back, I watched it like 25 times in ultra slow motion, But I remember seeing it, but I would assume your eyes were closed. Like a lot of times, press off the trigger and kind of flinch and close our eyes. Yeah. So you don't remember seeing, like, what was the first thing you saw?
Another part of the training you've given me is to keep my eyes open.
When you shoot.
When I shoot, both of them.
Yeah. That's one of the number one things, by the way, for people. If you're listening to this and you struggle to be an accurate shooter, it's probably because your eyes are closed when you press when you fire the round, and when you close your eyes, you probably flinch. Usually, people flinch down and left if they're a right-handed shooter, so they move the gun. There was this moment in class I took recently where he put up this slide of Yoda, and it said line up sights, press trigger, no move gun. Like that's all. That's shooting. Like once your sights are aligned, press the trigger without moving the gun, and you hit what you want. But anyway, curious what you saw.
I think I saw everything.
Okay.
I just didn't see the feather specifically. I think I was.
That might have been your angle too, because I was to your right.
Okay, and I feel like my eyes stayed on the line where I wanted.
I saw him go down. Right down.
He went right down, which I was very grateful for. Because you've told me, expressed to me that other things can happen if you don't have, an accurate shot, maybe.
Or like the thing is too, like, and if you shot, let's say we had a fresh piece of paper and you shot 100 rounds of your turkey shot at that piece of paper.
Right.
And each time you change the paper, I'm saying, you'll see that there's no consistency to your pattern. So sometimes the bird just magically happens to, all the pellets go around vital stuff. He might get hit, but you're wanting one that breaks the neck, interrupts the central nervous system, hits the brain, right? That's what we're trying to get, a mortal wound.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll see, like, you'll shoot the piece of paper, and I'm talking 20, 30 yards, and you'll be like, oh, if a turkey's head was just right in this spot, like, pellets are he's just going to evade them all somehow. But your bird went right down, and he was like, of course, you see this with a lot of birds and reptiles. Birds are reptiles, technically. You see the nervous system doesn't just shut down. Right. There's and this happens with mammals too, to a degree. You'll see them. You saw it with our bison when you were on that hunt. Kicking. Like that animal's dead, but the nervous system keeps going. So your bird kicked a little bit, but I had no urgency to run down there. I had prepared you that I might run down and grab that bird just in case,
if needed, because
sometimes they can reanimate and get away. And I was like, no, we're good. We just sat there.
Yes, and then we got ready. We still heard gobbles.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because you were like, okay, regroup. And again, with the river analogy, it was like paddling a rapid and having a short break. And then because sometimes you have flat water, quite a significant amount of flat water in between. So you can just chill out and celebrate what you just did. But oftentimes it's very quick. There's just before that you enter the another second rapid. And so it was reminiscent of that for me because rather than taking time to really like discuss or celebrate what had just happened, you were like, okay, regroup. Yeah. We might get your second turkey this morning. And I was like on it. I'm like, okay,
yeah, because the birds were still to the shot. That the birds gobbled reactionarily to the shot.
Right.
So he was part of a bachelor group of birds, and he was the one who came in first, and the other ones hung back. And I thought, let's just hang just in case. Of course, they didn't end up coming in.
Yeah.
It was quite a bit of commotion, but we sat there for a while, and I kept calling just in case.
Yeah.
But eventually, we went down there.
Right, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to be very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating to me. There was a feeling of familiarity, and I can't say more than that. Just something felt very natural, being there, taking the life of something that we are going to honor and consume and that will feed us.
Yeah.
All of that together, I didn't get emotional. I thought I was going to cry. And
I did too.
You thought I was going to?
I for sure thought you would.
Yeah. For me, there was
so normal.
just...
I see people cry often.
Yeah. And I really thought, knowing I'm a very emotional being, as you know, Daniel, I am sensitive too, right? I
didn't think you'd weep, but I expected, I've never seen somebody weep, but I see tears a lot, even an experienced hunter. So
I felt like it was a way to honor him in that moment, to come down to him and to thank him and to thank him for coming to our home and to feed us. And it felt like I wanted to be strong for him in that moment, in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but I didn't. And that's not me stopping the tears, me, if they're there, they're there. But it was just this like place of knowing, place of familiarity, place of gratitude. And it was, I would describe it as a beautiful moment in my life. And I felt lit up from the experience. And as you and I have discussed, it's not being lit up from killing something. It's from the whole journey of it, and the work and the discipline and the decision to that you've made in your life to do this, to provide for your family in this way. And somehow it just felt like part of us as a human. It felt part of me as a human. Like this is a natural way.
Yeah. And I was moved watching, because of course you wanted to do photos, right? It's like you want to.
Yeah.
It's like I always want to get photos, and so we took our time and got some really nice photos of you. And I kept saying to you, you notice how different it feels when you're the one in these photos than when you see the photos. Because when you see the photos, even as a hunter, you can understand why non-hunters see them as somebody gloating, or like somebody like you people think, oh, these hunters, they like killing. Oh, look at that smile on his face, just wants to kill. Like, and it's like, you don't understand what that smile is not about the killing.
No.
You know, you maybe for the occasional sociopath out there, but for the rest of us, it's not the killing part. It's all that you've gone through to get here, and finally you have success, and you've already been through, by the time you're doing the photos, you've already been through all the emotional, you've wrestled with all the emotions of killing, you've already done the killing, like that part's over, and now you and whoever's holding that camera and everybody's like in that moment of, we did it, all this preparation, all this time in, success, we're going to eat this animal, like all of that stuff. You're smiling almost uncontrollably at that point because you feel confident, like I did it. It's like such a great feeling. Yeah. And somehow it's like you want to put a disclaimer on photos sometimes, you know. For
people to understand. I so get it. The first few times you sent me photos, I had a bit of that reaction. I didn't understand it at first. I understood. I was so proud of you and so excited for you, but I didn't feel like to even keep the photo on my phone. I remember looking and being like, way to go, Daniel. And then I remember deleting the first few, you know? So I was like, and now I have such a different understanding, but it took me all these years to get there.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, really understandable. And man, we got great utilization out of your turkey. Because, you know, we got them home and...
Feels so good.
You know, I've stopped plucking turkeys.
Right.
I'll pluck most birds. But because of the way that I cook turkey, I just don't find it... It takes so long to pluck them, and I don't find that it's just not useful to me. So I can quickly get the skin off. And as you know, that goes into the compost heap and was gone in the morning.
Yeah.
Like our compost heap is... basically the bar room for all the local wildlife.
Yes.
Like it's well known.
Yeah, I think so
from crows and ravens to, you know, small mammals like field mice, you know, to raccoons and foxes, and there's that little what is he called? Not a marten. Well, what is he called? Not a mink, not a marten. A weasel. Who comes in all the time. I see him all the time. Anyway, it's like that turkey skin was gone the next day.
Yeah.
The tail fan we kept for you, and the two wings we kept for you for, you know, beautiful like ceremonial fans.
Definitely.
And I cut all the meat out of that, you know, so that they would preserve, and salted them. And the meat that I took out of those, our dog's been eating.
Right.
So that was really cool. Then heart, liver, gizzard, took those.
That was something to pull the heart out. I just want to say,
because you butchered with me too, which was really cool. Yeah, you got to see all that. The breasts we ate for the dinner for the episode.
Yes, delicious.
The tenders are in the freezer.
Yep.
We
made a stock.
Now I'd made the stock out of the whole breastbone assembly.
Right.
The bone that I didn't take is the back saddle, because that always smells like turkey poop to me. So I put that out in the compost, again, gone by the morning.
Right.
The guts, again, gone by the morning, eaten by everything around. Let's see, the one leg I trimmed out completely, ground it, and we made burgers.
Which are delicious.
They were really good. The other leg went into the stock that we made, and the stock we made from that breastbone and from the 2 feet, which I blanched, peeled, and then used to make a stock. So then we cooked the other leg braised in that stock, and we ate that in a turkey soup with wild rice.
Highlight of the meal.
Yeah, it's good. I would say. So what we didn't eat was the guts, the saddle bone, and the head. All that got taken away by the local wildlife in like 12 hours, and everything else we have like consumed. And so that bird is like, and you got to experience this thing that I've talked about with you for all these years. It's like, man, when you sit down to eat a bird that you, or any animal.
Provided.
Yeah, and that you remember the story of getting.
Yep.
It's so different than it came to you in a package. It's just got such a different, and it's even so different than, somebody else had a story. It's like you remember that day pressing the trigger, like you were there. You know the story of that bird.
Yeah.
And man, it's powerful, huh?
Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt really good that evening, sitting to this meal that you so masterfully prepared, Daniel. Just big shout out to you and your cooking. I'm so lucky.
Thank you.
So lucky.
Thank you.
I happily do the cleaning the day after of all the gear to, in exchange for your amazing
Well, I have
flavors
done very few dishes since we've been together, so thank you for.
But really, it was a deep feeling. I mean that sincerely. Like to sit at that table and to know that we came together to make this meal happen. And yes, what a story for you and I. What a new experience for you and I too. And we completed it with the bracken fern, which was so nice too.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it just, I sat there with you so filled with joy for all of it.
Yeah.
For the whole journey.
Yeah.
And to be with you all these years and to still have new experiences together is really beautiful for us too as a couple. And I just want to thank you so much, Daniel, for being such an amazing guide this week, being so solid, being such a good coach with me, really, and really making me feel like I could do this. I've said this to you often, but I think we all need someone like that in our lives who believes in us. And I'm that type of person that if someone tells me I can do something, then I can do it.
Yeah.
And you did that for me this week.
Well,
so
I haven't always
thank
been
you
the best
so much.
coach, so you've taught me a lot about being a good
about
coach.
Being good coach. Well,
good
you were
man,
good coach all week.
You're easy to coach, and it's a lot of fun. I guess I want to ask you what's next, because as you know, I'm not ever going to put pressure on you to participate in any of this, but I also will support you if and when you ever want to. So, what's next?
I liked how at the dinner you asked me if I thought I would hunt again next spring with you, and I said no, in the fall. I'm ready
this turkey season.
So I'm ready to hunt this fall for the next turkey season.
Yeah.
I don't, at this stage, I will say I don't have the inclination yet to hunt anything else. Well, I'm starting here, and we'll see if it goes beyond or if it stays with turkey. I'm always worried about the turkey meat that's available in our rotation.
Running out of it, you mean?
Running out of it, yeah. So I'm grateful to contribute to that right now. And you are doing such a great job with maintaining all the, like having enough of all the other meats. So we'll see if one day I want to expand. Yeah. My hunting horizons, but for now I feel good about this, and I do know though that I would like to hunt with you again in the fall.
Yeah, that's awesome, and there's something to be said for getting good at a particular discipline, right? So it's like there's folks I know, it's like all they really do is duck hunt, or all they really do is deer hunt, and so it's like if you don't really ever want to expand past turkey hunting, you have such a rich hunting career just doing that, and like that's. As you saw, there's so much to learn. And what's cool about turkey is it's one of the most psychological. Right. Like you're talking to the animal, you're in conversation with him, you're trying to chess game him and convince him to do something he's like doesn't normally do, which is go to a hen. You're talking. I mean, it's like a really unique. It's very fulfilling and satisfying. Like you don't need to hunt a whole bunch of other things to feel like you're getting a lot out of it. And it's certainly, as you saw, it's not crabs in a bucket. It's or fish in a barrel. Which is it? I think it's fish in a barrel. Anyway, the point is, it's not like a guaranteed thing. Like, yeah, I got a gun. I'm gonna go out there and just get one. It's like good luck. Like it's a lot. There's a lot to it. And that thing that people always do, which you've heard me, say ad nauseum, is like, oh, shit, if you want turkeys, come to my house. They're always in my yard. It's like, yeah, because you're not trying to kill them. Once you try to kill them, they're not in your yard anymore, and they're very hip to what you're doing. Like, they know the difference between predatory activity and somebody who's a casual bystander, and they figure that out fast. And, you know, squirrels are the same. You see that. It's like, oh, you should come to my house. It's like, you should come hunt with me and see how hard one is to actually nail down.
Yep.
So, yeah, and my point is, like, I think turkeys could be, but I do think you might enjoy sometime sitting a deer stand with me, just next to me, like not hunting or shooting, but just, because one of the things I thought was really awesome was getting to share that time of day with you.
Yes.
And getting to see what happens when nature forgets you're there. Because when you first walk in, like, everything knows you're walking in. And then once you settle in for a while, everything just goes back to its baseline. It's amazing how much we don't see every day because our presence is so obtrusive,
right,
that nature quiets down, animals stop showing up, you don't hear all those things. And then when you're just there, you're just being quiet, it's like, wow, this is the symphony that's happening all the time. Even when there's cars going by and things are happening, it's like, it's our presence changes it. So it's cool when you fade into the background. And I think that the mornings were as worthwhile to experience as the hunt.
In a sense, it's a form of meditation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely is.
It was as though you and I were meditating together.
Yeah, like I was saying, that the pistol discipline is extremely beneficial to the long gun application.
Yep.
Similarly, like a meditation practice for people who have a hard time sitting a stand or staying in place for a while, it's like, man, it is a meditation. So the better you are at, like, quieting yourself down and just being. Yeah. Wow, so this was a really fun experience, Avani. I'm so glad to get to share it with you, and I feel really I felt really blessed and really fulfilled by what we shared this week. So it was a huge gift to me, what you did, and also, for you to participate in making the episode and being willing to do that. For your first hunt, it's very vulnerable, and then come do this podcast. So, thank you for your contribution to all of this content and this project as well. I just really appreciate the whole thing, and we have so much to talk about with it. Personally, like, it gives us this whole other dimension to share in our relationship. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for contributing so greatly to my lit upness this week. I'm super grateful to you.
Any final thoughts for the folks listening?
Just, my one thought would be just to say how really important it is to just keep trying new things in your life, no matter what way that comes, but to just keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit from time to time. I think there's a real healthy aspect to that.
Beautifully said.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. Help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 10 episodes. Season 2 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2022. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.